Alrighty, folks, got a long-ass video here today for you. Handicapped a lot of games in my notes, so if you're sticking with me, you're going to be here a while. Of course, welcome to the program for College Football Week 8. My name is Brock Page. I've been dishing out free sports picks on YouTube since 2016. Of course, if you want to see which games on the slate here this week that I actually like the best, I'll tell you how to do that at the end of the video. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. Going to start off with the Saturday slate. Arizona taking on Houston, 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Houston's minus 2.5, totals 48. Both schools playing solid on the defensive side of the football. Houston's allowing just 17 points a game, top 20 in fewest yards allowed per play. Jalen Garner leads the defense in tackles. Allen and Fotu with 71 tackles between the both of them. Meanwhile, Arizona on the other side, well, they're allowing just 18 points a game themselves. They've got a top 10 passing defense. Dalton Johnson with 41 tackles on the year. Stukes and Cole with a pair of interceptions each. Arizona games are 4-2 to the under this year. Houston with unders against Texas Tech and Stephen F. Austin. I like the under 48. Next matchup, Army-Tulane, 12 o'clock East. Tulane is minus 11. Total is 47. And as good as the grain wave has have been this season, well, they did fail to cover in 3 out of their last 5. Failures to cover against the likes of East Carolina, Ole Miss, and South Alabama. And for some reason, this Tulane offensive unit, they do tend to shut down late in games. They're averaging just 8 second-half points per contest. And they're taking on an Army squad who actually got the W in their last 2 straight, allowed just 10 points a game on average in those 2 games. You know, it's an Army defense who's rarely on the field. They lead the nation in defensive time of possession. Andon Thomas leads the D in tackles. Fortner and Larkin with 71 tackles between the both of them. Of course, both schools with unders in their last 3 respectively. Give me Army plus 11. Under 47. Baylor, TCU, 12 o'clock East. TCU's minus 3, total 66. Both schools are 4-2 on the year, doing some real good things on the offensive side of the football. TCU's averaging over 35 points a game. They're throwing for a gazillion yards. Josh Hoover's thrown for nearly 1,900 yards already and 18 touchdowns. Eric McAllister with 541 yards receiving and 7 scores. Meanwhile, Baylor on the other side, well, they're averaging over 36 points a game themselves. And, yep, you guessed it, they're the best passing team in college football. They're throwing for a gazillion yards as well. Sawyer Robertson, he's thrown for over 2,000 yards and 19 touchdowns. Cameron and Trigg, they've got nearly 900 yards receiving between the both of them. Baylor games went 4-2 to the over this year. TCU with overs against K-State, North Carolina, and Abilene Christian. I like the over 66. All right, Central Michigan taking on Bowling Green, 12 o'clock East. BG is minus 5.5, totals 44. Bowling Green covered the point spread in 4 out of their last 5 games, doing some good things on the defensive side of the football. They're currently in the top 20 in takeaways. Really getting a lot of footballs on the turf. Gideon Lamprin with 57 tackles on the year. Pascal, Pringle, and Bradley, they have 6 forced fumbles between the 3 of them. And they're facing a Central Michigan squad who's been little threat throwing the football. They're actually averaging just $150 a game through the air. Bottom 25 in scoring. The Chippewas saw unders against the likes of Eastern Michigan and San Jose State. I like Bowling Green minus 5.5, under 44. All right, next game, Eastern Michigan taking on Miami, Ohio. That's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff. Not listed on our big screen, but Miami, Ohio is minus 13. totals 49. The Red Hawks are 3-3 on the year. Eastern Michigan just 2-5. The Eagles are averaging only 23 points a game, bottom 25 in yards per pass. And they're facing a Red Hawk secondary who defends the pass well themselves. They're in the top 15 in fewest yards allowed per throw. And a big contributor to that, it's been the pass rush. Miami's in the top 15 in sacks per game. Eli Blakey with 50 tackles on the year. Trick and Kuwatch with 8 sacks between the both of them. And as a team, Miami covered the number in their last 3 straight. Allowed only 7 points a game during that span. Of course, no real surprise, the Red Hawks saw unders against the likes of Akron and Wisconsin. Eastern Michigan with unders against Northern Illinois and Central Michigan. I like Miami, Ohio, minus 13, under 49. Georgia Tech, Duke, 12 o'clock East. Duke's minus 3, total 60.5. And both programs playing tough on the defensive side of the football. The Blue Devils are in the top 20 in sacks, forcing a whole lot of turnovers. Duke's actually in the top 15 in takeaways. Musa came with a pair of interceptions from the secondary. Vince Anthony with 6.5 sacks. Meanwhile, Georgia Tech on the other side, they're giving up just 21 points a game, allowing just $188 a game through the air. Kyle Efford leads the D in tackles. Powley and Lightsey with 55 tackles between the both of them. Georgia Tech with unders against Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Colorado. I like the under 60.5. LSU Vanderbilt, 12 o'clock East, for whatever reason, not listed on the big screen. I think this will have more games later in the week. But anyway, LSU Vanderbilt, 12 o'clock East. Vandy's minus 2.5, totals 50. Both teams are 5-1 on the year, playing some pretty good defense. The Commodores allowed just 19 points a game. They've been pretty tough against the run. Vandy's limiting opposing ball carriers to just 90 yards a game on the ground. Meanwhile, LSU, they've got a top 25 rushing defense themselves. They're actually limiting opposing offenses to just 11 points a game. The Tigers saw unders in all of their contests this year except for one. Vandy with unders against Alabama and South Carolina. I like the under 50. UConn, Boston College, 12 o'clock East. BC's minus 2, totals 57.5. Boston College just 1-5 on the year. UConn's 4-2. The Huskies are averaging 37 points a game. They've got a top 25 passing offense. Skylar Bell, 562 yards receiving. Cam Edwards, he's rushed it for 637 yards himself. They're facing a Boston College defense who's actually in the bottom 10 in points allowed. They've suffered losses in their last 5 straight. When it comes to the total, both schools with overs in 4 out of their last 6, respectively. Give me UConn plus 2, over 57.5. Washington, Michigan, 12 o'clock East. Michigan's 5.5, totals 51. The Wolverines allow just 18 points a game, top 20 rushing defense. Meanwhile, Washington is giving up just 19 points a game themselves. Just 83 rushing yards a game they're giving up. Huskies with unders in their last 3 straight. Michigan with unders against the likes of USC, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma. I like the under 51. All right, next game, Oklahoma, South Carolina, 12:45 Eastern start. Oklahoma's minus 4, totals 43. The Sooners are 4-1 on the year. South Carolina just 3-3. The Gamecocks are having issues on the offensive side of the football. Bottom 30 in rushing and points per game. And they're facing a tough Oklahoma defense who allows just 9 points per contest, 3.7 yards per play. Kip Lewis leads the D in tackles. Thomas and Wine with 7.5 sacks between the both of them. Sooners with unders in every single one of their contests this season. South Carolina games went 4-2 to the under themselves. I like OU minus 4, under 43. West Virginia, Central Florida, 1 o'clock East. UCF's minus 6.5, totals 49. The Knights are 3-3 on the year. West Virginia just 2-4. The Mountaineers are scoring only 22 points a game. They've got a bottom 20 passing offense. And they're scoring off against a UCF secondary, who's limiting opposing quarterbacks to just $157 a game through the air. They've been tough against the pass. Lewis Carter, team leader in tackles. Dunham and Kozlowski, 63 tackles between the both of them. UCF with unders in 3 out of their last 4. West Virginia games went 4-2 the under this year themselves. I like Central Florida, -6.5, under 49. All right, Kent State, Toledo, 2 o'clock East. Toledo's -24, totals 53. The Rockets are 3-3 on the year. Kent State just 2-4. The Golden Flashes are averaging just 19 points a game, bottom 5 in yards per play. And they're facing a Toledo defense who's allowing just 3.7 yards per play themselves. That's best in college football. And a lot of that is thanks to the secondary. Toledo's got a top 5 passing defense. Toledo with unders against Akron, Western Michigan, and Kentucky. Kent State on the other side, unders in their last 2 straight themselves. I like Toledo -24, under 53. Buffalo, UMass, 2:30 East. Buffalo's 17.5, totals 43 and a hook. The Bulls are 3-3 on the year. UMass 0-6. The Minutemen are giving up 37 points a game, bottom 20 rushing defense. Meanwhile, Buffalo is gaining nearly 170 yards a game on the ground, covers recently against UConn and Minnesota. Buffalo with overs in 3 out of their last 5. UMass with overs against Iowa, Bryant, and Temple. I like Buffalo -17.5, over 43 and a hook. Purdue, Northwestern, 3 o'clock East. Northwestern's -3, totals 49. The Wildcats are 4-2 on the year. Purdue just 2-4 themselves. The Boilermakers have definitely struggled offensively in the second half. They're actually averaging just 9 second-half points per game. And they're facing a tough Northwestern defense who's allowing just 17 points per contest. They've got a top 20 passing defense. Of course, as a team, the Wildcats are on a 3-game winning streak, covers in 4 out of their last 5. Total-wise, the Wildcats with unders against the likes of Penn State, UCLA, and Oregon. Purdue games went 4-2 to the under themselves. I like Northwestern -3, under 49. All right, Troy, UL Monroe, 3 o'clock East. Troy's -5.5, totals 47. Troy's 4-2 on the year. UL Monroe's 3-3. The Warhawks average just 17 points a game, bottom 10 in passing yards. And a little threat throwing the football there. And they're facing a solid Troy secondary who's limiting opposing receivers to just $183 a game. Trojans with victories in their last 3 straight. When it comes to the total, the Trojans with unders in 3 out of their last 5. UL Monroe with unders against the likes of Coastal Carolina, Arkansas State, and St. Francis. I like Troy -5.5, under 47. All right, next matchup, Akron, Ball State, 3:30 Eastern start. Ball State is -2, totals 43. Ball State's just 2-4 on the year, having a tough time on defense. They're allowing 32 points a game, and they're currently in the bottom 30 in the nation in passing defense. And they're facing an Akron squad who covered the point spread in 3 out of their last 5 themselves. Outright victories over the likes of Central Michigan and Duquesne during that stretch. Akron games went 4-2 to the over this year. Ball State with overs against UConn and New Hampshire. Give me Akron +2, over 43. All right, Coastal Carolina taking on Appalachian State. That'll be a 3:30 Eastern kickoff. Appy State's -11.5, totals 50. Appy State's 4-2 on the year. Coastal just 3-3. The Chants have one of the worst offensive units in college football. Bottom 3 in yards per play, averaging only 14 points a game. And they're facing an Appy State team who's been tough to run the football against. As a matter of fact, the Mountaineers have a top 10 rushing defense. Colton Ferris with a pair of interceptions out of the secondary. Floyd and McCantos with 50 tackles between the both of them. Appy State with unders against Oregon State and Charlotte. Coastal with unders in 3 out of their last 5. Give me Appy State minus 11.5, under 50. Michigan State, Indiana, 3:30 Eastern start. Indy's minus 26, totals 53. Indy's 6-0 on the year. Michigan State just 3-3. Sparty's giving up 32 points a game on defense. They're actually allowing 5.9 yards per play from scrimmage. And they're facing an explosive Indy offensive unit who's actually averaging 45 points a game. Huge win over Oregon on the road. Really put it to the Ducks. And listen, this is a team who likes to ground and pound it. They love to run the football. The Hoosiers have a top 10 rushing offense. Roman Hemby's leading the team in rushing yards. Kalen Black averaging 6 yards a carry himself. Indy with overs in 3 out of their last 5. Michigan State games went 4-1 to the over in their last 5 themselves. Give me the Hoosiers minus 26, over 53. Northern Illinois taking on Ohio, 3:30 Eastern start. The Ohio Bobcats are minus 12, totals 44. Now, the Bobcats have had some issues protecting the quarterback. They are in the bottom 25 in sacks allowed, and they also tend to shut things down late offensively. They're actually in the bottom 15 in fourth quarter scoring. And as bad as this Northern Illinois offense has been, I think the D can keep this one within double digits. They're allowing just 20 points a game, top 25 passing defense. When it comes to the total, the Huskies saw unders in all of their contests except for one. Meanwhile, Ohio with unders in 3 out of their last 5. I like Northern Illinois plus 12, under 44. All right, next game, Ohio State, Wisconsin, 3:30 Eastern start. Ohio State's minus 27.5. Total is 42. Ohio State 6-0 on the year. Wisconsin just 2-4. Of course, the Badgers lost their last 4 straight. And listen, they just can't, get things right on offense. The Badgers averaged just 8.5 points a game during that 4-game skid. They're in the bottom 10 in yards per play. And they're facing a tough Ohio State squad who leads the country in defensive points per game. They're actually allowing just 6 points per contest. That is it. Top 10 in fewest yards allowed. Sonny Styles with 38 tackles. Reese and Curry with double-digit sacks between the both of them. Of course, both schools with unders in 3 out of their last 4, respectively. I like Ohio State minus 27.5, under 42. Old Dominion, James Madison, 3:30 East. JMU's minus 1.5, totals 48. The Dukes are 5-1 on the year. Definitely a tough team to score points against. They're limiting opposing offenses to just 13 points a game. Top 15 passing defense. They're facing an Old Dominion team who's completing only 16 throws a game. They're actually coughing up the football an awful lot. ODU's turning it over more times a game than any other school in the country besides one. Having significant problems with turnovers. The Monarchs saw unders against the likes of Liberty and Indiana. James Madison with unders in all of their contests except for one. I like James Madison minus 1.5, under 48. Ole Miss, Georgia, 3:30 Eastern start. Georgia is minus 6.5. Total is 55. Both programs with some top-tier defenses. Georgia's allowing just 17 points a game. Top 20 rushing defense. And Ole Miss on the other side, they give up just 19 points a game themselves. Top 30 passing defense as well. The Rebels with unders in their last 3 straight. Georgia with unders in 3 out of their last 5. Give me the under 55. Not giving you a freebie on that one. Hell no. SMU, Clemson, 3:30 Eastern kickoff. Clemson's minus 10, totals 54.5. Clemson is 3-3 on the year. SMU's 4-2 themselves. And the Mustangs have been tough against the run. They're allowing just 22 points a game. Meanwhile, Clemson's had a tough time covering the point spread this year themselves, For a team laying double digits, they're just 2-4 against the number. Of course, on the offensive end, the Tigers have definitely struggled with turnovers. They're in the bottom 20 in offensive turnovers per game. Clemson contest went 4-2 to the under this year. SMU with unders in all of their games except for one. I like SMU plus 10, under 54.5. Temple, Charlotte, 3:30 Eastern start. Temple is minus 10, totals 47. Temple 3-3 on the year. Charlotte just 1-5. The 49ers give up 33 points a game. Bottom 3 rushing defense. They're actually giving up nearly 225 yards a game on the ground. They're facing a Temple squad who's scoring over 30 points a game themselves. They're actually one of the better covering teams in the nation. The Owls successfully covered in all of their contests this year except for one. Their games also went 4-2 to the over this year. Charlotte with overs against the likes of South Florida, Rice, and Monmouth. Give me Temple minus 10, over 47. Texas A&M, Arkansas, 3:30 East. A&M's minus 7, total 62. A&M 6-0 on the year. Arkansas 2-4. The Razorbacks give up 31 points a game, allowing over 6.3 yards per play. They're facing a Texas A&M team who's scoring 35 points a game themselves. They're actually averaging nearly 200 yards a game on the ground. Both schools with overs in 4 out of their last 6, respectively. Give me A&M minus 7, over 62. All right, next matchup, Texas State taking on Marshall. That'll be a 3:30 Eastern kickoff. Texas State is minus 3.5. Total is 65. The Bobcats dropped 3 out of their last 4 ball games. Failed to cover in each and every one of those contests. When it comes to defensive play, they've definitely had a tough time slowing down the run. They're actually allowing 30 points per contest. And they're facing a Marshall team who likes to run the football themselves. They're gaining just about 200 yards a game on the ground. Michael Allen leads the offensive unit in rushing yards. Quarterback Del Rio Wilson with over 1,000 all-purpose yards and 14 total touchdowns. Wilson's yet to throw an interception. Marshall with overs in their last 3 straight. Texas State with overs against the likes of Troy, Texas San Antonio, and Eastern Michigan. I like Marshall plus 3.5, over 65. UNLV, Boise State, 3:30 Eastern start. Boise's minus 11, total 63.5. Boise's 4-2 on the year. UNLV 6-0. The Rebels are rushing for nearly 200 yards a game on the ground, top 20 in scoring. Jaden Thomas is averaging 8 yards a carry, 577 total yards on the ground. Meanwhile, Calandria and Lee, they're both averaging 5 yards a carry as well. And they're taking on a Boise State secondary who does tend to allow chunk plays. They're actually in the bottom 30 in yards allowed per pass. Boise games went 4-2 to the over in their last 5. UNLV with overs against the likes of Air Force, Miami, Ohio, and Idaho State. I like UNLV plus 11, over 63.5. Texas San Antonio taking on North Texas, 3:30 East. North Texas is minus 6, total 67. And even though this is not a huge number, the Mean Green did fail to cover against the likes of South Florida and Western Michigan this year. They're definitely having a tough time stopping the run. The Mean Green's giving up over 200 yards a game on the ground. And they're facing a Roadrunner offensive unit who's averaging 35 points a game themselves. Robert Henry with 730 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns. Of course, both schools with overs in 4 out of their last 6. I like Texas San Antonio plus 6, over 67. Wyoming Air Force, 3:30 East. Air Force is minus 5.5, totals 58 and a hook. Air Force just 1-5 on the year. Horrible on the defensive side of the football. The Falcons give up 8.1 yards per play from scrimmage. That's worst in college football. Their secondary also allows 323 yards a game passing. That's also worst in Division I. And they're facing a Wyoming offensive unit who woke up a bit last week against San Jose State. They actually beat the Spartans and scored 35 points in that victory. Wyoming saw overs in 2 out of their last 3. Air Force with overs in all of their contests themselves. I like Wyoming plus 5.5 over 58.5. Memphis UAB, 4 o'clock Eastern start. Memphis is minus 21, total 64. Memphis is 6-0 on the year. UAB just 2-4. The Blazers give up over 41 points a game. That is actually worst in college football. And a big problem for them, it's been the run defense. They're giving up 214 yards a game on the ground. And they're taking on a Memphis offensive unit who definitely likes to run the football. They're in the top 15 in rushing yards, averaging 41 points a game. Sutton Smith's averaging 6.5 yards a carry. Brendan Lewis with nearly 1,700 all-purpose yards and 15 total touchdowns. And in addition to their unblemished record, the Tigers successfully covered the point spread in every single one of those victories. Now, total-wise, Memphis saw overs against Florida Atlantic and Arkansas. UAB with overs in all of their contests except one. I like Memphis minus 21 over 64. Texas Tech, Arizona State, 4 o'clock East. Texas Tech is minus 10.5, totals 49. The Red Raiders are 6-0 on the year, covered the point spread in all of those victories. And as good as they've been offensively, well, they've been pretty dominant on the defensive side of the football as well. Tech's allowing just 12 points a game, #1 rushing defense in the nation. Jacob Rodriguez leads the day in tackles. David Bailey with 8.5 sacks on the season. And they're facing an Arizona State team who has not been overly prolific throwing the football. They're actually chucking it for just $193 a game, bottom 15 in yards per pass. It's also a heavily penalized group on offense. They're committing 8 penalties a game on the offensive side of the ball. Both schools with unders in 3 out of their last 4, respectively. I like Texas Tech minus 10.5, under 49. Mississippi State, Florida, 4:15 East. Florida's minus 10.5, totals 52.5. The Gators are just 2-4 on the year. Mississippi State, 4-2. This Bulldog defense allows only 19 points a game. They're actually a top 25 passing defense. Jerron Manning with the most tackles on D. Mitchell and Smith with 58 tackles between the both of them. And they're going to square off against a Florida offensive unit who's actually in the bottom 30 in rushing. They're not running the ball well. And, of course, they're averaging just 22 points a game. Now, for some reason, these guys really tend to shut down late in games offensively. The Gators are in the bottom 5 in the country in fourth quarter scoring. Now, both schools with unders in 4 out of their last 6, respectively. I like Mississippi State plus 10.5, under 52.5. All right, next matchup. Southern Miss, Louisiana, 5 o'clock East. Southern Miss is minus 3.5, totals 54. The Golden Eagles are 4-2 on this season. Louisiana just 2-4. The Raging Cajuns are having a tough time slowing down the run. They're actually allowing over 215 yards a game on the ground. They've also had a tough time in recent meetings with Southern Miss. They actually failed to cover the point spread in their last 10 straight against the Golden Eagles. And we could see more of the same because Southern Miss has done a nice job against the point spread this year. Covers in 4 out of their last 5, averaging over 32 points a game. Southern Miss games went 4-2 to the over in their last 5. Louisiana with overs in 3 out of their last 5 themselves. I like Southern Miss minus 3.5, over 54. Oregon Rutgers, 6:30 East. Oregon's minus 16, totals 59. Oregon's 5-1 on the year. Rutgers is 3-3. And this Scarlet Knight defense has definitely had their issues. They're a bottom 25 passing defense, allowing nearly 7.1 yards per play from scrimmage. And they're taking on an Oregon team who's Still averaging over 42 points a game. Tough loss last week at home to Indy, but it's still an offensive unit that can move the football. I would imagine they're probably going to be pretty pissed off after that Indy loss as well. Of course, when it comes to the run game, the Ducks are in the top 25 in yards per. They're in the top 25 in yards per game on the ground. When it comes to the total, Oregon with overs against Penn State and Oklahoma State. Rutgers with overs in all of their contests except for one. I like Oregon minus 16 over 59. All right, Washington State taking on Virginia, 6:30 East. UVA is minus 17, totals 56. Virginia 5-1 on the year. Wazoo just 3-3. And more recently, the Cougs dropped 3 out of their last 4 games, giving up a bunch of points late. They're in the bottom 15 in fourth quarter points allowed. And they're taking on a Virginia offensive unit who's got little problems getting it into the end zone. This is a top 10 point scoring offense in the nation. Jamari Taylor is averaging 5.1 yards per carry on the ground, 8 touchdowns for the running back. And Chandler Morris, he's completing 70% of his throws, over 1,400 yards passing. The Cavaliers saw overs in all of their contests except for one. Washington State with overs in 3 out of their last 5. I like Virginia minus 17 over 56. All right, Georgia State taking on Georgia Southern, 7 o'clock East. Southern's minus 6, totals 59.5. Georgia Southern with covers in 3 out of their last 4. Covers against the likes of Southern Miss, Maine, and Jacksonville State. And they're facing a Georgia State Panthers team who lost all of their games this year except for one. Just one cover on the season for them as well. This Georgia State defense allows over 41 points a game, bottom 5 in sacks. 2 out of the Panthers' last 3 did get over the total. Georgia Southern with overs in all of their games except for one. I like Georgia Southern minus 6 over 59.5. All right, next game, Hawaii, Colorado State, 7 o'clock East. Colorado State's minus 2, totals 55. Colorado State just 2-4 on the year. Hawaii's 5-2. The Rainbow Warriors have also done a nice job against the point spread as well. They're currently 5-2 against the number through 7 games. Johnson and Benton with 7.5 sacks between the both of them. Peter Monema with 38 tackles. And they're facing a Colorado State team who dropped 3 out of their last 4. They're a bottom 30 passing offense. Of course, no real surprise. The Rams are averaging only 22 points a game. Now, 3 out of Colorado State's last 5 did stay under the total. Hawaii with unders against the likes of Fresno State, Arizona, and Stanford. I like Hawaii plus 2, under 55. Maryland, UCLA, 7 o'clock East. UCLA's minus 3, totals 52. The Bruins with overs against Penn State and Utah this season. Offense is really starting to hum. The Bruins scored 80 total points in their last 2 outings combined. Meanwhile, Maryland saw overs against the likes of Nebraska and Towson. And it's a Terrapin offense who protects the football. Really not a bunch of turnovers for these guys. And as a matter of fact, they're in the top 10 in the nation in fewest turnovers per game. Of course, their O-line's doing a great job protecting the quarterback. They're in the top 5 in fewest sacks allowed. Give me the over 52. Next matchup, Penn State. Oh, man. Penn State, Iowa, 7 o'clock East. Iowa's minus 2.5, totals 39. The Hawkeyes are 4-2 on the year. Penn State on a 3-game skid. Just fired James Franklin. Of course, I would say they're in trouble with Drew Aller going down for the year, but it's actually probably going to help them a little better on offense. I've been telling you guys for 3 years that this Aller guy ain't got the goods, and he sure as shit exposed himself end of last year and pretty much the entire half of the year. Don't want to wish a guy hurt. I don't feel good about that, but he probably saved his draft stock by going down, honestly. Because if this dude would have finished his entire senior year, it was only going to get worse for the poor guy. He should have went to the draft last year. But anyway, when it comes to the point spread, the Nittany Lions have been a disaster. They failed to cover in every single contest they played in this season. Meanwhile, Iowa on the other side, complete opposite. They successfully covered in their last 5 straight. They're allowing just 13 points a game on defense. Carson Scharar, team leader in tackles. Max Llewellyn, handful of sacks. Iowa games went 4-2 to the under this year. Penn State with unders against Northwestern and Florida International. I like Iowa -2.5, under 39. Texas, Kentucky, 7 o'clock East. Texas is -12, totals 44. The Longhorns got the W in 4 out of their last 5. Big win in the Red River shootout over the weekend. And this is a Texas defense who's they've been tough to move the football against. They're actually allowing only 11 points a game. Top 5 rushing defense. And they're facing a Kentucky squad who's definitely had their issues moving the chains. The Wildcats are in the bottom 25 in yards per play from scrimmage. When it comes to the point spread, the Cats did fail to cover in all of their contests except for one. Of course, total-wise, Texas games went 4-2 to the under this year. Unders against the likes of Oklahoma, UTEP, and San Jose State. I like Texas -12, under 44. All right, Florida Atlantic taking on South Florida. That'll be a 7:30 Eastern start. USF's -21. Total is 73. The Bulls are 5-1 on the year. Florida Atlantic just 3-3. The Owls give up over 33 points a game, having a tough time slowing down the run. And unfortunately for them, USF's a top 25 rushing team, averaging 41 points per contest. The Bulls with overs in their last 4 straight. FAU with overs in 3 out of their last 4 themselves. I like South Florida -21, over 73. Next game, Pitt, Syracuse, 7:30 East. Pitt's -10.5, totals 56 and a hook. The Panthers are 4-2 on the year. Big win over Florida State over the weekend. Syracuse just 3-3 themselves. Wow, that was weird. Never lost power during a podcast. Almost lost it there. Maybe it'll flicker again. Scared the shit out of me. But anyway, Pitt, Syracuse, 7:30 East. Pitt is -10.5, totals 56 and a hook. And I'll tell you what, the Panthers are 4-2 on the year. Like I said, big win over Florida State. Syracuse just 3-3 themselves. The Syracuse secondary is allowing more completed balls a game than any other school in the country. They're actually allowing nearly 300 yards a game through the air. And unfortunately for them, the Pitt Panthers do like to sling it. They're actually averaging 40 points a game and over 300 yards per contest passing. Rasheem Biles leads the defense in tackles, couple of sacks and a pick 6 for the linebacker. And Kyle Lewis with 21 tackles and a pair of fumble recoveries himself. Pitt's all overs in all of their games except for one. Syracuse with overs against Clemson and Tennessee. I like Pitt -10.5, over 56 and a hook. Tennessee, Bama, 7:30 East. Alabama's -8, totals 59.5. Both teams are 5-1 on the year, really humming on offense. The Tide's got a top 15 passing offense. Tennessee leading the country in scoring. All Tennessee's games this season got over the total except for one. Bama with overs against the likes of Wisconsin, Florida State, and UL Monroe. I like the over 59.5. USC, Notre Dame, 7:30 East. Notre Dame's -8, total 61. Both schools with overs in 4 out of their last 6, respectively. Both doing a lot of great things on offense. The Irish average 40 points a game, top 10 in yards per play. Meanwhile, USC averages over 8.3 yards per play themselves. They're a top 3 passing team. I like the over 61. Missouri, Auburn, 7:45 East. Auburn's -1.5, totals 45. Auburn with unders in their last 5 straight, allowing just 17 points per contest. Meanwhile, Missouri gives up just 17 points a game themselves, unders in their last 2 straight. I like the under 45. Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, 8 o'clock East. Oklahoma State's Oklahoma State, not favored. Cincinnati's minus 20.5, totals 58. Now, since he's 5-1 on the year, Oklahoma State just 1-5. The Cincy Bearcats are allowing just 19 points a game on defense. They're in the top 3 in the country in forced fumbles. Jake Golday with 55 tackles and 3 sacks. Gola Callard, oh, there it goes. I had a feeling that we were going to lose power. I'm going to continue this whole thing in the dark. I'm not starting over. We're 41 minutes into the podcast, and you're just going to have to look at me in the dark. This is kind of freaky. I'm in my studio's in the basement, but I had a feeling it was going to go off again, which is so rare because, it is rare because bought this house 4 or 5 years ago. We never experienced any power outages during the day. As soon as all the electric bills went up, tripled in price, we lose power now. It's unbelievable. Anyway, Cincy, Oklahoma State, 8 o'clock East. Oklahoma State is just 1-5 on the year. Meanwhile, Cincy 5-1. The Bearcats allow just 19 points a game. Top 3 in forced fumbles. Jake Golday with 55 tackles and 3 sacks. Gola Callard and Thompson with 64 tackles between the both of them. And they're facing an Oklahoma State team who averages 16 points a game, bottom 10 in yards per play. The Cowboys are currently on a 5-game skid, and they failed to cover in all of their contests this season except for one. OSU also saw unders against Arizona and Tulsa. Cincy with unders against UCF and Nebraska. Give me Cincinnati minus 20.5, under 58. This is a Brock Page first. Doing a podcast in the dark. All right, Utah, BYU, 8 o'clock East. Utah's minus 3, totals 47.5. The Utes with overs in their last 2 straight. 4-2 to the over for the entire season. Meanwhile, BYU with overs in their last 2 straight themselves. Both offenses are moving the football. Both schools are in the top 10 in rushing. Both are averaging nearly 40 points a game. I like the over 47.5. Nevada, New Mexico, 9:45 East. New Mexico's minus 11, totals 48. New Mexico 3-3 on the year. Nevada 1-5. Of course, the Wolfpacks allowing nearly 30 points a game, 5.8 yards per play from scrimmage. Meanwhile, New Mexico got the W in 3 out of their last 5 themselves. Covers this year against UCLA, New Mexico State, and Michigan. Bankston and Humphrey are averaging over 5 yards per carry. There it is. It might go out again, though. What's the line on it going out again? I'm going to say plus 300. There's a chance it'll go out again. I don't know. But anyway, it's so weird, too, because my power lines are underground. I don't know why that happens. But anyway, Bankston and Humphrey averaging over 5 yards a carry combined, 9 total touchdowns between the both of them. The Lobos' last 3 straight did get over the total. Nevada with overs against the likes of San Diego State and Penn State. I like New Mexico minus 11, over 48. And with that, folks, we're going to jump into our next and final breakdown for the video. Florida State, Stanford, 10:30 Eastern kickoff. Florida State's minus 17, totals 54.5. The Noles are 3-3 on the year. Stanford just 2-4. The Cardinal gives up over 30 points a game, having a terrible time defending the pass. Stanford's got a bottom 3 passing defense, and they're facing a Florida State team who's got little problems getting on the scoreboard. They're averaging 44 points a game, top 5 in rushing. Gavin Sawchuk's averaging 5.3 yards a carry, a handful of scores on the ground. And Florida State with overs in all of their contests except for one. Stanford with overs in 3 out of their last 4. I like Florida State minus 17 over 54.5. And with that, folks, now it's time for our quick pick recap. I like the under 48 in that Arizona-Houston matchup. Army plus 11, under 47. Over 66, Baylor-TCU. Bowling Green minus 5.5, under 44. Miami, Ohio minus 13, under 49. Give me the under 60.5. Georgia Tech, Duke. Under 50, LSU, Vanderbilt. UConn plus 2, over 57.5. Give me the under 51, Washington, Michigan. Oklahoma minus 4, under 43. Central Florida minus 6.5, under 49. Toledo minus 24, under 53. Buffalo minus 17.5, over 43 and a hook. Northwestern minus 3, under 49. Troy minus 5.5, under 47. Akron plus 2, over 43. Appalachian State minus 11.5, under 50. Indiana minus 26, over 53. Northern Illinois plus 12, under 44. Ohio State minus 27.5, under 42. James Madison minus 1.5, under 48. Give me the under 55. Ole Miss, Georgia. SMU plus 10, under 54.5. Temple minus 10, over 47. Texas A&M minus 7, over 52. Marshall plus 3.5, over 65. UNLV plus 11, over 63.5. Texas San Antonio plus 6, over 67. Wyoming plus 5.5, over 58 and a hook. Memphis minus 21, over 64. Texas Tech minus 10.5, under 49. Mississippi State plus 10.5, under 52 and a hook. Southern Miss minus 3.5, over 54. Oregon minus 16, over 59. Virginia minus 17, over 56. Georgia Southern minus 6, over 59.5. Hawaii plus 2, under 55. Over 52, Maryland, UCLA. Iowa minus 2.5, under 39. Texas minus 12, under 44. South Florida minus 21, over 73. Pitt Panthers minus 10.5, over 56 and a hook. Over 59.5, Tennessee, Alabama. Over 61, USC, Notre Dame. Under 45, Missouri, Auburn. Cincinnati minus 20.5, under 58. Over 47.5, Utah, BYU. New Mexico minus 11, over 48. And give me Florida State minus 17, over 54.5. And with that, folks, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my premium page. And if you do end up getting a membership here today on my premium site, just a friendly reminder, you're going to get access to that membership every single day for the next 30 days. And as an added bonus, you're also going to get access to all of my cheaper memberships during that time frame, absolutely free. Going to be included with your membership. Of course, that's why I always tell folks that Gold Club package, it's a full access, all-inclusive membership. Gives you access to every single premium selection of mine, every single package, every single day for the next 30 days. Of course, if you want to see which one of the games on the slate here this week that I actually like the best, you're going to want to think about signing up for my college football tier membership. But most importantly, folks, got to thank you for joining me right here on the free video. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. With that said, folks, happy Monday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my premium page.